Good morning to you. Welcome to the Breakfast Club. My name is Brighton Ncube. Over the past few days, the social media has been buzzing around the issue of the SI, which was gazetted, not gazetted, but however, it was rescinded a few days ago. So today on the show, we're going to talk about the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act. So joining me to discuss this is Nikiwe Ncube Tshabalala, a lawyer based in Bulawayo. Ma'am, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, good morning. Let's talk about the process of gazetting an SI. There have been many SIs in Zimbabwe. Let's talk about the process. How do you gazette an SI?
Yes. The SI is actually provided for, in this case, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. It's got a section in that act which sets out how the president is supposed to issue a notice. And such a notice constitutes a statutory instrument. So it's provided for in terms of the law, as long as the president has issued a notice, like in this case, we presume that all the legalities have been complied with for it to form a statutory instrument. So any notice issued by the president in terms of that act, it's supposed to be a statutory instrument.
So at this point in time, when they are nullifying that SI, like what was wrong with that SI, which was released on Friday last week? What was wrong with that SI?
I don't understand what was wrong with the statutory instrument. Remember, we've got a presumption of legality to say whatever you are publishing, we are saying it's now ready for what? For public consumption, and it's supposed to bind us, and it's supposed to be law. So I don't understand what went wrong behind the scenes that we don't know of. Now we are seeing the back and forth in terms of trying to bring it back.
So before we delve in deeper into that SI, let's look at the issue of now. Yesterday there was the cancelling, rescinding of that SI. Can you ungazette a gazette via press statement in Zimbabwe, or is it legally though?
No, you cannot. You cannot. That's just a press statement, all right? There are legal procedures that need to be followed before you can reverse any law that has been gazetted. As far as I'm concerned, that statutory instrument actually applies right now as is. One naughty person or anyone else who's got a legal mind can actually use that statutory instrument to procure those goods in terms of that statutory instrument, because it's still law until it's repealed. So until Zimbabwe will go to the stage of repealing that statutory instrument, it remains valid and binding.
Okay, let's jump into the SI. There's a part that speaks about the issue of national interest. Not going to disclose issue of procurement, because these things are carrying of national importance or national interest. What does it mean to someone who's watching the show? Lay language. What does it mean?
Well, there is no universal definition, so to speak, of the word national interest. All right. Here we're talking about taxpayers' money. And remember, one of the founding principles in our constitution is transparency and accountability, right? So if transparency is part of our principle in terms of the constitution, then we need to be transparent about public funds. We cannot seek to hide. Yes, there are things that maybe for security reasons, like acquiring ammunition and the type and everything, we can't disclose that, lest it leaks to our enemies and they destroy all of us. But when it comes to taxpayers' money, there's need to account so that you instill public confidence to say the tax that we are paying is being used for the purposes that is intended for that money. So national interest is in quotes. It depends on what definition you give it. But really, there's so many loopholes that then kick in terms of trying to define that term.
You speak of transparency and issues of accountability. I think last year there was the issue of laptops being procured by the parliament, and then there was the issue of inflating of prices. Then during COVID time, there was the issue of drugs again, PPE equipment being bought, and so on and so on. Let's talk about the issue of oversight by parliament. Do you think parliament is playing enough role to do oversight in terms of these issues?
They are supposed to monitor. These are the people that we elect to go and monitor those processes to make sure that we do not suffer as a nation in the process, right? If you're procuring laptops, what's there to hide in laptops, right? You're saying these are laptops that are going to be used for national use. So we are supposed to know. Their prices are supposed to be reasonable. We have the parliamentarians who are supposed to scrutinize the whole process to say, have we followed the legal procedures in terms of procuring these assets? So really, I don't understand why we have to go this far as a nation. We can actually do better.
Now let's focus on the SI, on the issue of public procurement and disposal of assets. What are your major areas, the grey areas that you pick out from that SI that we can say flag out and say this is not legal, it's not allowed?
What I'm picking out there is to envelope a group of areas where we are saying publicity is not necessary. An ambulance, for example, drugs, for example, what's there to hide in those? Construction material, what's there to hide? Is there a security issue arising from those? I think we have gone too far in expanding that, and we really as a nation will be trying to hide a lot to the taxpayer or to the citizen. So really I find there are loopholes in that statutory instrument. They need to be attended to. There is need to account. I'm happy that the president at least has addressed that in a way to raise alarm, to say, no, this is not how we are supposed to be dealing with public funds. So really, I don't see what is there to hide in terms of procuring ambulances and things like that.
Speaking of the president raising an alarm and speak about that, but can a gazette be gazetted without the knowledge of the president? And then you see it on our social media, and then the president is aware of that.
We presume that he should know, because that notice, in terms of the act, of the main act, is supposed to come from him. So once he has authorized it and it has been gazetted, we are saying it has passed through the legal processes, that is through the president. So we are presuming that he should have known. I don't understand what happened or what went wrong. Yes.
So now on the issue of access to information, I was speaking about that earlier on, to say, now as a journalist I can access information to say this ambulance was bought, so how many ambulances were bought, this much was spent on ambulances. So for me, there's the issue of access to information as a journalist. I don't have access to information. What are some of the violations that can be raised from this SI?
Well, in terms of those valuations, that's some of the loopholes that we're talking about. To say, okay, there's no way we're going to know how drugs, ambulances are going to be procured. And then what are we telling the public? What are we saying about the taxpayers' money? Really, it raises an alarm, so to speak. So these are some of the issues where we can actually litigate on and say, no, we can't go this far. We need to know. We have got the right to know how the taxes that we pay are being utilized. So what is important there is to establish the legal standing. What is our interest in that whole process? So our interest is to know how these funds are being spent and to make sure they are being channeled to the rightful processes. So at the end of the day, we are interested parties by virtue of being citizens, by also virtue of being taxpayers. So we need to access that information, and it should be made available and known to us.
Someone may argue and say that SI was rescinded yesterday. It was cancelled. It was nullified. According to the statement, says it was nullified. And so, what does it mean now that it's nullified?
Actually, according to me, it hasn't been nullified.
Because by a press statement,
it cannot be nullified by a press statement. It has to be repealed. We were supposed to file another notice repealing that statutory instrument, not a press statement. So really, as a nation, we have got that duty. If the authorities that are aware, they are supposed to be publishing another notice repealing that statutory instrument, and that hasn't happened. Until that happens, that statutory instrument remains in place.
So if you're saying now, as you speak right now, it's still in place, that statement is still in place,
yes.
What does it mean for us now to say anyone can procure stuff and not disclose those issues? Remember last week, I think I was reading an article, they were saying 193.3 million was spent to revamp the whole sector. So for now, we don't know how much money has been spent. There's a loan. We don't know how much money was spent on that and so on and so on. What does it mean now in terms of our health issues and so on?
What it means is that statutory instrument can actually be used. So much can be procured using that act. And legally so, because it remains in force. So whoever is out there and procuring, they can't be taken to court to say you have used a repealed law. It's still law until it's repealed. So they can go ahead and procure whatever, and we cannot legally challenge that because the law is in force. So at the end of the day, it's all up to the authorities that be to actually make sure that it gets repealed so that it doesn't become enforceable.
But as a lawyer, are there any loopholes that you can take from that SI to say we can litigate going forward, to say, guys, we want to access information, we can't access information? What other loopholes can we pick and that can push forward, take them court?
Yes, like we were talking about the issue of transparency and accountability. As long as you can establish the legal standing, right, the interest that you have in that SI, to show how you are affected. Let's say those who want to bid for tenders, for example, to say, so if you're not going to tender for these things, where do we stand here? So if you can establish that, you can actually challenge and litigate on that statutory instrument, because it usurps powers to say you cannot go for tender for this particular element. Really, as a business person or as a citizen, somehow we have got to establish your right and actually litigate.
Earlier on, we spoke about the issue of laptops, the issue of the drugs gate, and so on. So what does this mean to our procurement process in Zimbabwe? Do we have a strong procurement setup process? Do we need to adopt an e-procurement system? What do we need right now in Zimbabwe in terms of our procurement processes?
I think we've got all the legal instruments in place. What is important is to respect the legal instrument that we put, and not just tear them apart in bits and pieces. That's what I have seen personally. Like in this case, the Act itself allows the President to issue a notice. And we are saying, Mr. President, say, may we have those notices pass through you and not have this haphazard back and forth. At the end of the day, it's bringing confusion now. Because right now we're having a statutory instrument that is legally in place, but in court, not repealed or reversed, so to speak. It brings confusion to the nation, because it's not everyone who's also sophisticated to understand that the press statement that has been issued does not actually repeal that statutory instrument.
If you're just joining us, this is the Breakfast Club. My name is Brighton Ncube, and my guest this morning is lawyer Nikiwe Ncube Tshabalala, discussing the issue of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act. Now, Nikiwe, speaking about the issue of repealing this SI, what are the processes that should be done to repeal this SI?
Already there has been acknowledgement that something is wrong, and we have actually violated one of the principles of our constitution. We have seen that in the press statement done and circulated by the President. So the next step is to actually draft a notice that would actually reverse that statutory instrument, that will actually repeal that statutory instrument. Just to say, statutory instrument number so and so, gazetted on this particular date, be and is hereby repealed. That's the statement that we need to be published immediately, so that the enforcement of the current statutory instrument can actually be put on hold. So that's what we need to see right now.
But speaking about someone saying what the heads must roll somewhere, somehow, anyone who leaked that SI must be fired. Let's talk about the issue. Nick Mangwana is defending, PEMSEC Nick Mangwana is defending that statement earlier yesterday morning. Later on, Tambama, he was saying, no, this is wrong again. Do you think heads must roll in this department, and whoever leaked that statement must be fired?
The heads must roll part of it. It's a challenge, and we are saying how many things have actually leaked into the public spaces, and we don't know, right? Really, it's a very difficult question to answer. What I'm wondering is how much damage has actually been done through such negligence, if it's negligence, so to speak, or someone just realized, I didn't read carefully there, now it's affecting A, B, C, D, F, G. So really, heads must roll, yes, but are we supposed to know all that as citizens? We expect the rightful authorities to go through their processes, to respect the internal processes until a law is gazetted. Because once a law is gazetted, it binds you and me, right? It's supposed to be enforced or to be enforceable, and we're supposed to respect that. So if then they let their guns down and they don't guard against that, then how are we going to trust our systems? They owe us a duty to make sure the systems are sealed, watertight, so that such things don't happen. Right.
So this SI, someone was saying to me yesterday, particularly we know about this SI because on the public life and all the media things.
Yes.
So do you think people in rural areas, in some parts of suburbs somewhere, they know about these SIs, the procurement processes, or now the reversal and repealing? Do people know about this information?
Obviously, there's so much ignorance in Zimbabwe. People are worried more about bread and butter issues and economic issues. No one cares about whether this is legal or not legal. But we are not supposed to take the people of Zimbabwe for granted. We owe them the truth. We owe them the respect to our processes and to our laws. So we are supposed to do the rightful thing so that they can trust the systems and trust the law. So if we're not doing that for them, then who will?
Lastly, on the issue of transparency and accountability, you spoke about that. Say it's part of our constitution, issue of transparency and accountability. But now we see this SI leaking and being defended and not being defended and being reversed and so on. What does it mean about this government in terms of accountability, in terms of transparency? How transparent are they in terms of the citizens of Zimbabwe?
Well, it's a cause for concern, really. It's a cause for concern because we expect a smooth flow in publication of the law. At the end of the day, what is gazetted and what happens practically, it seems that there may be a disconnect at the end of the day, because you're saying, how can a whole statutory instrument, through all those authorities with our brilliant brains and minds in our institutions in Zimbabwe, how did that happen? So really it's a cause for concern, right? And you're saying from previously going forward, it seems these loopholes are not guarded against. This is not the first time. It seems it's continuing. They really need to do a lot to make us trust whatever they are doing in those particular departments. But
also we have another board in Zimbabwe, the Auditor General Office, where each year in, year out, there's been releasing some reports to say this was misplaced, this was overexpended, and so on and so on. But nothing has been done in terms of recommendations. So do you think the Auditor General can take up this issue and also bring about the issue of procurement processes in Zimbabwe?
I think they can do that. They can do that. They have to work throughout the processes to make sure that there is that trust in the systems of government. There is that following of the processes. So if the Auditor General is responsible for that, let them fish out and say, okay, this was the problem, this should not happen, this is how we can guard against future leakages. If there was a leakage, how did the leakage happen? Who disrespected who? How could that have been avoided? So they have to make sure all those things are not allowed into the public domain. They should happen behind the scenes and make sure whatever comes out through the rightful channels, through the rightful person, and it becomes, we speak with one word.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. I was speaking about the issue of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act. Maybe my last question would be, anything on your mind around the issue of procurement in Zimbabwe? What can be done going forward? What's the best way, alternative, that we can use to procure things in Zimbabwe?
I think speaking from what I know, the best is to stick to the principles in our constitution. Transparency. Transparency builds confidence in us or in me as a citizen of Zimbabwe to say the systems are working for us. So if they are going to do any procurement, let it be in terms of the law. If there is going to be any set aside, the president should be made aware of what needs to be made aside, and once he publishes these notices, so that we respect the law, so that we respect the law. Can they do the proper things? Because right now, you don't trust anything that comes your way, anything that comes through the press, through the media, social media, wherever. It's now very difficult at the end of the day, because you don't know who next is going to publish another statement. It's like, this is hearsay, or this is an advert that has come through. 10 to 30 minutes later, it's withdrawn. What is that back and forth? It doesn't give us confidence to say they are doing the right thing or they know what they are doing. So really, they need to work a lot on covering those principles that I'm talking about, transparency especially, so that they build confidence in the citizen of Zimbabwe that things are under control. There's no need to panic. So we cannot allow the usurping of powers to say you close out everything. For security reasons, I will agree. There's no security in an ambulance, for example, in procuring an ambulance. Even if it's 1 million, let it be known. Let us know that this is what has happened. What's there to hide? These are public funds, and we need that confidence coming from our government. So really, let them stick to the principles in our constitution. It's a very beautiful document that we have. Let's respect it. Let's follow the principles therein, so that we all have confidence in the systems of Zimbabwe.
Now I bring another point that's interesting around the issue of the constitution of Zimbabwe. Say it's an interesting document, it's a good document, but it's not followed. There are many laws in Zimbabwe that are not even aligned. All right, I mean, it's not aligned to the constitution of Zimbabwe. Why are we not following the constitution of Zimbabwe though? This beautiful document I'm talking about.
Yeah, it seems like there are some of us who want to respect it as and when it pleases us. If it's not good for me, I'm not going to to follow it, I'm going to do as I please because it doesn't benefit me. It's not supposed to be like that. The law, whether it's painful or not, it has to be followed, it has to be respected, and it has to apply equally on everyone. So here there's a give and take, and you start having suspicions to say, okay, so and so was not happy about the procurement process. Maybe they wanted to supply Zimbabwe with certain drugs, and now if it's not going to public tender, how am I going to secure that contract, for example? And you find now it's being reversed. At the end of the day, you don't know which is which, what is the truth, what is the basis here. So, yeah, we really need to respect our law, whether or not it's favorable to me or not.
Nikiwe, thanks so much for your time this morning, for joining us on the Breakfast Club.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Right, this has been the Breakfast Club. My name is Brighton Ncube. We're talking about the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act, and today my guest was Nikiwe Ncube Tshabalala, breaking down to us and analyzing the SI, what needs to be done and what needs to be done in terms of procuring issues in Zimbabwe. Thanks so much for your time, guys. Do enjoy the show and do follow us at SideZW.